let's move on. We heard earlier how important harmonization and standardization is for an industry to really push forward with all their innovations as quickly as possible. But let's be honest, it is quite some tedious work. I always have the biggest respect of people really sitting in a room for hours and hours and days and coming up with norms and standards. I cannot imagine, but there are some people who are very enthusiastic about it, and specifically in Germany, there's a big enthusiasm for setting norms and standards, and one of these people that really bring life to such a topic is Benjamin Helfrich. He's leading the DPP project at DIN, and he's also been incremental from Germany, pushing for the founding of JTC 24. Welcome on stage. Very happy to have you as a moderator for our next panel session. And before I hand over to you, once again, during the panel session, send your questions using Slido. You'll see the QR code specifically if you're taking part as an online participant, but of course also if you're here in the room. Let's start it.
So please, please the other speakers come to the table here in the front, and I will say who you are. At least we have Mr. Thomas Knote, and I think he already was sometimes engaged this morning already on the standardization issues, because he is one of the central persons also from the Battery Pass project, from the Fraunhofer IPK Institute, and he is also the chair of the JTC 24, where we are standardizing the digital product passport, not directly the battery passport. Then Mrs. Dr. Kerstin Sanferro, she is standardization manager from the electronical part, the mirror organization, at least from Germany, the DKE, and then Kaisa Toros-Kainen from the Global Battery Alliance, who are making also some parts of standardization and in the supply chain view, and Tim Salatsky from ZIV, the Association for German Bicycle Industry, at least, who represents the users and the producers, and at least he will, in the first round, the last person to say us if we are on the right way with our standardization. But he also is very engaged in standardization since 15 years, and you can give them an applause. At least I'm Benjamin Helfrich from the German Standardization Organization, and I'm not directly responsible for the digital product passport or the battery passport, because the hard work that is made at least in the standardization committees, and I'm something like the strategic manager on these issues, and I'm responsible for strategic projects in the area digital ecosystems. At least I'm in the advisory board of the Battery Pass project, and we brought together the several issues, especially the battery passport and the digital product passport issue together. And this is the thing to describe a little bit what is standardization. I know standardization was, and the standards been a part of the first part of the conference today, but I want to underline that there are several types of standards, and there's the official norm and standardization organizations like ISO, IEC. In Europe it's CEN and CENELEC. In Germany it's DIN and DKE, and everybody of you, at least in your countries also got some mirror organizations on this. We got several other standardization organizations also on the international level, like IEEE, W3C, ITU, ETSI, and so on. But the biggest organization, at least, are ISA and IEC, with more than 170 member countries. And at least the CEN and CENELEC, it's the same organization on the European level, at least they are the organization which are addressed by the European Commission to underline legislations. And so we have on the one hand the battery regulation, on the other hand the ESPR, the Eco Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, which are addressing the product passport. The first one is a battery passport, but the other one is the digital product passport itself, and in general at least. And it will come to a very big wie sagt man, Bedeutung. It will be very important in the future, because the EU Commission is thinking to bring up the product passport for every product category at least. And so now we underline the ESPR with the DPP system standardization, because the ESPR asks for the interoperability of the several product passports. And that is what Thomas Knote, at least as the chair of the JTC, the Joint Technical Committee in CENELEC 24 DPP, is doing at the moment. And perhaps you can give us a little view on your work, what you're doing at the moment there, and later we look a little bit broader.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. I think I have to start a little bit more from the beginning, because it's very popular to attack European Commission about over bureaucracy. But I think they made some work very well. So, for instance, they tried to do the separation of the DPP system with the value chain, the DPP system from the product-specific data regulation. And even from the perspective of data spaces. But of course, in total, we need a common framework where the interfaces between all this are defined in a very nice way, and this is currently missing. So, and this makes our work as well, to some extent, quite problematic. And on the other hand, we have a more broader aspect, and even at this point in time, and when we started with this standardization in 2023 early, European Commission was not so much aware that this is a real global perspective. So we cannot live in Europe alone. And this is practically an issue. Just looking to Franz Geier representing ACEA, the European Automotive Association, as well BMW, and they are producing batteries for all the world, for different brands, applied in different communities, at least, and all these things. So we need a global alignment. So, and what we have, of course, because the DPP is not an issue just in Europe, even we started with that, is now I stopped counting all the, let me say, global initiatives on standardization regarding DPP when it came to 30 different initiatives on standardization. So this is the global perspective we have to deal. So now coming to the JTC 24, and I'm very happy that European Commission really scoped our work first just to the DPP system, as Patrick and Nico explained, that it's just the one when the data is there, and how to publish and how to update. And here we have today 8 modules to be developed. For instance, the issue of the data carrier and the unique identifier, but as well the interfaces between the differences. And there's something else like security. And what the most important point is, and Patrick explained this, is to keep as much as possible inclusivity. Means to have as much as possible the availability of different standards in parallel. Because this DPP system is not just for the batteries or not just for textiles or construction, it's for everything. So we have already existing standards in the different industry, and it would be a nightmare if one industry has to cover everything, maybe from textile or whatever. Yeah, it would be kill our economy. Yeah, that's for sure. So this is one part, to have this inclusivity. The second is to have it as simple as possible. By having this modular approach, it is already better than others, of course. But here we have to work on that in order to keep it as simple as possible. And this is the next one, to separate to already existing implementation technologies. So this is technology neutral. So we have already, when you look into Google, you will find already for batteries a lot of different implementation examples. And what we do is to separate this from the technology in order to keep it possible to inline. And so the Battery Passport project made a lot of work to do this in order to have it as much as possible adaptable for the industry. And this comes to my last, at least, statement. This is looking to the SMEs. Yeah, because for the large ones like BMW, they can afford to some extent. Yeah. But looking to the not hyperscaler, yeah, to the companies who are producing maybe 400 a day or even less. So if our fixed cost is too much, then forget it. We kick out of our SMEs from the market. The other regions in the world, maybe Asia, where we have really the nice hyperscaler, they would like this because they can afford. Yeah, but here in Europe we have an SME-driven industry, and for that our let me say mandate in JTC 24 is as well to look at this, how it is from the cost perspective possible to do.
Thank you, Thomas. You see, Thomas has especially the systemic or system view, at least on the digital product passport and the passport system. And we also have here the Carsten Sanfer from the electronical standardization organization, at least from Germany, DKE. And we already get at least the question: is the best battery passport the same as the digital product passport in terms of standardization? I think you will answer this also.
No. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here. Yes, I'm responsible for the hard work done in the standardization committees for batteries, like you said, Benjamin, with some other colleagues. And we are facing the standardization request M579 by the Commission on doing standardization for batteries. We are working intensively in Senelec to standardize performance and durability data, SOH, and expected lifetime that was requested in this standardization request. This request was also amended. So things have changed while we were working on it. And what we've seen at first, that there will be not one standard for industrial batteries. That was a big problem. We have seen, like Johannes said, we need to differ between applications, between chemistries. So there are many expert groups working on performance and durability data for their application. And this will differ also in the battery path, but at the end we will have comparable, comprehensible data points as we standardize the measurement and calculation methods. But at the moment, it's a lot of work. Many standards takes time. Maybe some of you know how long it takes to develop a standard. For some data points, there were a good basis in standards already, but now there are data points requested by the batteries regulation we had not yet in standards. So yeah, a lot of things to do at the moment, and we are very intensively working on it on the Senelec level.
Thank you very much, Kerstin. Perhaps if you try to understand standardization, imagine that all the people sitting here have to get in consensus on what is the best color. At least everybody, I think, has an idea of what he like, but to have at the end of the discussion one solution or one addressed color, that is really, really hard. And so that is sometimes, you sometimes, Thomas says sometimes there's blood at the walls at the end of the discussion. So standardization is not so boring, at least how several people think in the first thoughts about that. I just want to add one thing, because we talked about this, that the standards of Senelec underlying legislation, and we heard this. So there comes in the when the standards should do this, a standardization request from the EU Commission to Senelec, and then when the standardization organizations are aligned with the EU Commission, if they can achieve this request, there comes the standardization mandate. And due to this mandate, we have time to deliver the standards, and the standards at the end you can use for bringing up your products or your digital product passport on the European market. And addressing the standard, there's at least the reversal of the burden of proof if it's in the sense of the legislation. And so that is the most important thing why these standardizations and standardization mandates are so important, not only for Europe but also for all the suppliers and so on for the European market. And that starts the thing into the international market also, because I have been 2 years ago in China and discussed the digital product passport, and now we have several digital passports initiatives in the whole world. And there's the question everyone talks about, interoperability. What is actually meant by this interoperability between DPP service providers? Why is it necessary? At least it's not the interoperability between service providers. It's the interoperability what is needed for the data flow from pre-products to other products. And imagine you have a passport for this building, a building passport, and you collect all the passport information from the others without interoperability and compatibility between the data. That won't work at the end. And so this international view and the supply chain view is more a thing what is also addressing our colleague here from the Global Battery Alliance, Kaiser, and we are very happy to having you here. And what is your perspective on this, and what are you working on at the moment?
Great. Thank you very much from my side as well for having me. So indeed, the Global Battery Alliance is a global pre-competitive multi-stakeholder alliance bringing together battery value chain industries, civil society and government stakeholders to really zoom in on sustainability performance of the battery value chain, and eventually to create a product level sustainability certification, much like many of you know, like the Forestry Stewardship Council, FSC for forestry products, etc. This is really to serve a few different purposes that have come out really clearly in the discussions today. There is a need for more transparency on the value chain, more transparency on the state of sustainability performance, be it around carbon footprint or social issues, and how that relates to compliance requirements also here in the EU, notably regarding the due diligence and carbon footprint requirements, but also other regions and other jurisdictions have their own due diligence requirements. But almost more importantly, this allows providing consumers, investors, OEMs who are purchasing the batteries comparable data on sustainability in the upstream value chain in particular. Of course, this will extend to recycled materials going forward as well, which is no small feat to actually apply these rules there as well. And then eventually it allows the battery producers to differentiate their performance on the basis of their sustainability performance. And this is exactly what clearly there has been a call for in terms of competitiveness from Europe, but of course from elsewhere as well. We're a global alliance. And in this work, we touch upon standardization in a couple of different ways. Actually, we're quite often asked if the GBA is actually building a standard, not in the strict sense, at least, as we're discussing here. But perhaps the closest example is our work on the greenhouse gas rulebook that provides a global methodology for calculating the carbon footprint for a battery, and that has been a great collaboration with the Battery Pass consortium and has been also adopted by other standards or as part of their standards like Katina X and others. And this has really been an example of how a global multi-stakeholder collective can come together and together elaborate rules that are acceptable, realistic, implementable in terms of how to aggregate that footprint along the value chain. And there are other topics like that. So in areas where there aren't really standards, we actually can provide a space for initiating such a discussion, which can then eventually feed into a more formalized standard. A second way is really more related to the due diligence and ESG performance in the upstream value chain. So if you haven't heard enough acronyms and technical language during today yet, especially those of you who are actually having to conduct due diligence on your supply chains, will have heard the automotive OEMs and others, a lot of other new acronyms in terms of names of upstream due diligence standards. IRMA, RMI, Coppermark, etc., CMSI, and these are all existing ESG, environmental, social, and governance performance standards and due diligence standards on what information you are supposed to collect from your supply chain in order to be compliant and conduct due diligence. So basically what we are doing in this space is actually create harmonized performance metrics for these issues that consumers and others care about as well. Child labor and all other risks were mentioned, but also positive contributions. So the battery investments have a huge opportunity to also bring jobs and economic development in different parts of the world. So how do we measure and allow companies to demonstrate that they're actually contributing to this positive effort? So it's almost like in the demonstration that we saw earlier, there was a due diligence report, a link to an external report. Instead of that, our aim is to provide comparable data indicators, a dashboard of a particular battery, and make it comparable across different batteries. And the final and third area is obviously to ensure that interoperability and exchange of these sustainability reports and certifications adopt and collaborate with those who are developing those data exchange protocols and standards and make them applicable at the global level, and also connect all of this information into that digital product passport infrastructure and adopt things like these performance parameters and others where we are not directly elaborating any work. So lots going on and really tackling more of that upstream part that has maybe had a little bit less focus in our discussions up until today.
Thank you very much, Kaisa. It was just that we have not so much time and everybody is hungry, so he came to me and asked me if we how fast we can do this panel. But I think there are a lot of questions. But first, I want to get now in the discussion Tim from the German bicycle industry and your perspective on the standardization zoo, perhaps I can say it like this, and what does help you at least? What is for you difficult to manage, and perhaps where do you see things what are still not be solved or might solved through standardization.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and representing bicycle industry. So bicycle industry is using LMT batteries, so a new category of batteries introduced in the battery regulation. Quite interesting for me as a representative of, let's say, economic operators who are at the end responsible for the battery passport, that the people who are developing it and talking about the content and everything else are not yet clear on how to proceed, or let's say how to finalize the battery passport. And when I look into the time frame, it's not that far ahead of us that we are obliged to provide the battery passport with our product. And there comes standardization into play. Was also quite interesting to hear this morning also the clear link between regulation and standardization. That's why I'm also involved with standardization for 15 years now, and also in particular with electric bicycles, who do not only have to fulfill in terms of batteries, the battery regulation, but also quite a few other regulations, and where standards play a huge role in a certain legal certainty. So the presumption of conformity that you were just mentioning, so by fulfilling a harmonized standard, you also fulfill the underlying European regulation. So that's why for us, harmonized standards are very crucial in terms of showing compliance with existing regulation. But here, in particular with the battery passport, we have the situation that there's a lot of standardization going on. Some of it is harmonized, is leading to a harmonized standard, other is not leading to a harmonized standard, and we need to be very careful not to, let's say, over-standardize on the one hand, and on the other hand, for us it's important to know what do we need to put into the battery passport, or what kind of information does need to be inside this document, and looking into the regulation, which is to a certain extent quite vague. So we need delegated acts and more interpretation and information by the European Commission in order to be able to draft corresponding standards. So we're missing a few steps here. We try to be fast because there's a deadline, but we're missing input from the regulator. So that's a huge problem for us because, yeah, you start, of course, there's a deadline, but it could be that you go in the wrong direction. So you need to go back to start or to an earlier point and then take a new turn in order to be in compliance. And that is a huge problem that we're facing right now. Of course, from the industry side, it is very important to be present in standardization in order to influence, as I said, standards are used to show compliance with regulation. So from an industry point of view, it's very good to be present in standardization and influence the content of the standard, because at the end that will become more or less a law. Harmonized standard has a really high status, so that's quite important to be present. But when I look into standardization of the battery passport, it's very, very technical, very IT tech. We talked about nerdy stuff. So of course, from a LMT economic operator, so a bicycle manufacturer, I'm not really that much interested in data points. So I'm interested in what kind of information do I have to put in and where do I get it from. So, and that's also where these interoperability issues come into play, quite important along the value chain, so that we know which kind of data is required, which kind of information, and how can I put it into the battery passport. And we're still, in the fog. We don't know what will be the outcome, and in more or less 1 year, we need a product, because, of course, it needs to be some time to be developed. So in 1 year, we need to be finalized, and they don't see that yet. And so that's a huge issue that the industry is being pushed quite hard without the proper set of, guidelines.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I think that is also what we, when we started on the digital product passport, addressed. that we have such a lot of activities and also solutions at the beginning, and I'm very happy that we have a very good interaction, at least with the European Commission at the moment, to solve these problems and the lack of standardization or lack of input from the European Commission, at least on this thing. So we heard now 4 or 5 perspectives at least on the thing. One is the systemic view, the one the product view at least, the global and supply chain view, and the view from a user and producer at least. We have a lot of questions, and you asked me to open the panel also for the people in the audience, because that I'm not able to handle from here with the Slido. So perhaps we start with the question round.
Absolutely. So we planned to go over time because we already included questions earlier in the session, so we knew we'd go over time. But I know that, Thomas, if you have to catch your next appointment, feel free to leave so we don't get you into trouble. Yes, so there are some questions online. Which one do you want to pick? You have a good eye for what's relevant in this context.
Now I have to, because I have been at the morning in appointment. Thomas is now in an appointment, and yesterday and tomorrow. There's so much activities at the moment, and I think that is what we try to handle at the moment, because there's several things. But please, Thomas.
Maybe we just take the first one.
Yes, how can we get early insights into the preliminary results of the JTC 24 standardization work? Quick answer, Thomas.
Yeah, this is very crucial and hard, because this is part of the standardization to have at least the first version when it is mature. And this means when it comes to the voting to the BTs, this is the technical directors from the different standardization bodies in national standardization bodies. So what I will do is to ask European Commission and CENELEC how to make this process more transparent, because by law it is not allowed today to come out with preliminary results, but I think in front of our industry, because they need substance and they need preparation time, this would be one of the parts to discuss with European Commission to get out much earlier with these results. There are a lot of people in the room, like Nico and others, they are always blame me and say, hey, Thomas, what's wrong with that? Why you cannot have it open? I'm from legally perspective binded here, but this is, I take this to the European Commission and CENELEC how to deal with that in a better way.
Thank you. Let's do a quick round of very quick questions, very quick answers. I know the topic does not make it easy, but...
Sorry, I have to intervene here. Sorry, Thomas. I think with the wording that was not very precise and might lead to a wrong image here, Thomas. It is not prohibited by law anyway. There are internal regulations of European standardization organizations, and there are confidentiality agreements. The reason why is you need a kind of protected room to achieve a consensus. And in that, it might be disturbing to disclose information if you have a discussion. So therefore, we have the disclosure rules. But if there is a consensus achieved and the TC agrees, you can publish results or disclose results, not the text. And if you have a first draft for voting, as you said, that's correct, that is available also to the outside. So it's not prohibited by law, but as I said, if you have discussions and you have not achieved a consensus, we say you need the protected room.
Thanks a lot for that additional context. Next quick question. Europe is not battery self-sufficient. Is there a risk that in February 18th, 2027, non-EU batteries will be not compliant, leading to a shortage? Quick answer.
I'm not sure I can answer that question exactly strictly, but I think it links to a broader point on readiness, which has been really the word of the day in terms of regulatory readiness and otherwise. And it also speaks to my colleague's question here on what do? We don't know what data to put into this digital passport. Where do we get it? And I think it was referred to earlier. due diligence, and this is now more related to that part, at least on upstream risk assessment and due diligence, which could lead to non-compliance as well, is not a new thing. We don't, notwithstanding at all the importance of the guidance that we're all expecting, we don't need that to start getting ready to be compliant with international guidance from the OECD and others on due diligence. These are global requirements that have been in place for a long time. Resources exist, including our rule books, which we piloted actually last year with a number of our members, and it provided them quite a lot of insight on their readiness. So I would encourage just everyone to start putting in place due diligence systems, processes, and work with others, industry and other stakeholders. And in that case, we'll have a possibility to react at the moment when
Wonderful,
when the time
thank you.
comes. Thanks.
Quick question from the room, anybody? Did I see a hand? Yes, use the microphone, please.
Thank you. Gordana Kirans again. I have a question about another batteries that are smaller in size, but by sheer volume of appliances that we use, like laptops and phones. I remember listening to a representative from recycling industry talking about lack of modularity. We have the move towards repairability of appliances, but the problem is that every producer has a different battery in that. And this particular man was complaining about the lack of standardization when it comes to these batteries. Because if you want to repair one phone, you cannot use the other battery, and so on and so on. So is there any progress in that area?
On the national level in Germany, we have a working group talking about the repairability of batteries. And we are also talking about the smaller batteries too, because there are some repair actions at the moment as well. And yeah, we have seen that the biggest problem is the lack of information, which battery is in there, how it can be get outside and open and things like this. You should not normally open it on the easy way. So we are talking on this topic on the national level at the moment, but this is also in the work program within the standardization requests. So we will try to make a European standard on repairability of batteries.
Thank you. Quick statement.
Yeah, just a very quick statement. I know there is some discussion about maybe it would be beneficial to have a standardized battery which always looks the same. We have to look. We would have to dive into that. Whether it's a portable battery you're talking about, so in cell phones, for example, or is it LMT battery? LMT battery is from its concept totally different from a portable battery. Usually, LMT battery consists of quite a few cells, which are interlinked with each other, BMS also included. And the question is, do we hinder technical development by specifying a unified battery, which will always look the same? So there's no gain from further technical development in terms of higher capacity, so smaller batteries, for example, or same capacity, smaller batteries. So that's also questions that need to be answered. And what also comes into play is the lifetime expectancy of the battery. So usually LMT batteries are used for quite a long time. So we're talking about 10 years and more. And there's a question, do we want to really set a definitive dimensions of the battery for such a period of time? And then in addition, you have issues of communication of the battery, charging. There needs to be a communication between the charger of the battery and the battery itself. So you need to standardize also the communication protocol, and that becomes, on the one hand, complicated, and on the other hand, could hinder technical development. And I also agree there are some activities regarding repair of the battery so that you can ensure a longer battery life.
I think standardization just generally is not a topic where you can limit yourself to very crisp and short answers. That's why I think it's so admirable that we have all of you really doing this hard work for us and putting all your minds to figuring out those details that are not to be answered very easily and offhand. In regards to time, I'll come to you, Benjamin, in a second. We cannot go through the rest of the question. As earlier, please use info@thebatterypass.eu to send all the questions you have in the chat, and the team will answer it. You see the link down there, all the way in the right bottom corner of the slide, thebatterypass.eu. Just add an info at before. Send your question. Everybody in the room, of course, is more than welcome to make sure they talk to our panelists now in the lunch break. Which actually will be still an hour 15, so really a lot of time to also look into the technical demonstrator, talk to everybody, be back on time. Before we head out of the room, Benjamin, your famous final words?
My final words are, we have to bring all the activities together, and that is what we're trying now, and what is Thomas now trying. We are doing this with the JTC 24 on the system, and we will do it also. It's on the international perspective in the ISO ISC in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Benjamin.